What kind of person discovers their husband is sleeping with their sister and decides the perfect moment to expose them is at their parents' funeral in front of 200 mourners? This is the true story of how Patricia Morgan found evidence of a betrayal so deep it had been happening in her childhood home, how she spent 3 weeks planning her revelation, and why she chose the most sacred family moment to make sure everyone knew the truth. What she did didn't just destroy her marriage and her relationship with her sister. It fractured an entire family in ways no one saw coming. Patricia Morgan's parents died together, which was somehow fitting for a couple who'd been inseparable for 43 years. A car accident on a rainy November evening, a semi-truck that jackknifed on the highway, and suddenly Patricia and her younger sister Lauren were orphans at 36 and 32 years old. The grief was crushing. Patricia spent the first 3 days after the accident in a fog, making funeral arrangements, calling relatives, organizing the memorial service. Her husband Daniel was supportive, handling logistics, making phone calls, being the strong presence Patricia needed. Lauren was a mess. She'd always been the dramatic one, the emotional sister, and she fell apart completely. Patricia found herself comforting Lauren, holding her while she sobbed, reassuring her that they'd get through this together. "We still have each other," Patricia told Lauren the night after their parents died. They were sitting in Patricia's living room, drinking wine, looking through old photo albums. "We're still a family." Lauren hugged her tightly. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Trish. You've always been there for me." Patricia hugged her back, feeling the weight of being the older sister, the responsible one. She'd always taken care of Lauren, protected her, cleaned up her messes. That's what big sisters did. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday, 2 weeks away. Their parents had been prominent in their community. Their father had been a high school principal, their mother a nurse, and the service was expected to be large. Patricia threw herself into planning every detail, grateful for something to focus on besides her grief. Daniel helped with everything. He coordinated with the funeral home, arranged for out-of-town relatives to have hotel rooms, organized the reception that would follow the service. He was perfect, attentive, caring, exactly what Patricia needed. On the Tuesday before the funeral, Patricia drove to her parents' house to sort through some of their belongings. The house felt empty and wrong without her mother's voice calling from the kitchen or her father reading the newspaper in his favorite chair. Patricia had a key. She'd always had a key. She and Daniel lived 20 minutes away, and Patricia had been in the habit of dropping by several times a week to visit her parents. Lauren lived across town but came by, less frequently, always too busy with her job as a marketing manager or her social life. Patricia spent the morning going through her parents' bedroom, sorting clothes to donate, setting aside items of sentimental value. Around noon, she went downstairs to make coffee and noticed something odd. There was a coffee mug on the kitchen counter, still half full. Patricia recognized it immediately. It was from a set Daniel's company had made for a corporate event. She and Daniel each had one. The company logo was distinctive, impossible to mistake. Patricia picked up the mug, confused. Why would Daniel's mug be here? He hadn't been to her parents' house since before they died. She opened the dishwasher. Inside were 2 plates with dried food still on them, 2 wine glasses, and another mug. Someone had been here recently, after her parents died, and hadn't bothered to clean up properly. Patricia felt something cold move through her chest. Her parents had died 12 days ago. Who had been in their house since then? She had the only key besides her parents. Except, Lauren had a key too. Patricia walked through the house more carefully now, looking for other signs of recent occupation. In the living room, she found a throw blanket on the couch, neatly folded. It wasn't one of her parents' blankets. Patricia recognized it as one from her own house, a wedding gift she and Daniel had received years ago. Upstairs, Patricia checked the guest bedroom. The bed was unmade, sheets rumpled like someone had slept there recently. On the nightstand was a phone charger, an iPhone charger. Her father had used Android. Her mother hadn't used a smartphone at all. Patricia's hands were shaking now. Someone had been staying in her parents' house. Someone who had access to items from Patricia's own home. Someone who had Daniel's coffee mug. She checked the master bedroom again, this time looking in places she'd avoided before. In the trash can in the bathroom, She found an empty condom wrapper. Patricia sat down on the edge of her parents' bed and felt the world tilt. Someone had been having sex in her parents' house, in her parents' bed, while Patricia was grieving. She pulled out her phone and called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, babe, how's it going at the house?" "Have you been here recently?" Patricia asked, her voice tight. There was a pause. "What do you mean?" "I found your coffee mug in the kitchen. Have you been to my parents' house since they died?" Another pause, longer this time. Yeah, I stopped by a few days ago to check on things. Make sure everything was secure." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to bother you with it. You've been so stressed." Patricia's mind was racing. "Were you alone?" "What?" "Yeah, of course I was alone. Why are you asking me this?" "There are 2 plates in the dishwasher, 2 wine glasses. The guest bed has been slept in." Silence on the other end. "Daniel, who were you here with?" "Patricia, I don't know what you're implying." "Who were you with?" Daniel hung up. Patricia sat in her parents' bedroom, staring at her phone. Her husband had just hung up on her rather than answer a direct question. Her husband who'd been so supportive, so helpful, so perfect during the worst time of her life. She called Lauren. "Hey, Trish," Lauren answered, her voice thick like she'd been crying. "What's up? Have you been to Mom and Dad's house recently?" Lauren hesitated. Yeah, a couple times, just to, you know, feel close to them." "Were you alone?" "What kind of question is that?" "Lauren, please just answer. Were you alone?" "I don't understand why you're interrogating me." "Because someone's been sleeping in the guest room and having sex in Mom and Dad's bed." Patricia's voice cracked. "And I found Daniel's coffee mug here, and he just hung up on me when I asked who he was with." Lauren was silent. "Lauren," Patricia said quietly, "tell me you weren't here with Daniel." "Trish, I can explain." Patricia ended the call. She sat very still, phone in her hand, surrounded by her dead parents' belongings, understanding with horrible clarity what had been happening. Her husband and her sister had been having an affair, and they'd been using her parents' empty house as their meeting place. Patricia drove home in a daze. Daniel's car was in the driveway when she arrived. He was waiting in the living room, pacing. "We need to talk," he said when Patricia walked in. "Yeah, we do." They sat across from each other, and Daniel took a deep breath. "Lauren and we've been seeing each other. It's been going on for about 6 months." 6 months. Half a year. While Patricia had been planning family dinners, coordinating holiday visits, working 50-hour weeks at her job as a financial analyst, while she'd been trusting both of them completely. "In my parents' house," Patricia said, her voice flat. "You've been fucking my sister in my parents' house." Daniel had the grace to look ashamed. "Not at first. That only started after they died. The house was empty, and we needed somewhere private." "My parents died 2 weeks ago," Patricia interrupted. "You've been screwing my sister in their bed while I've been planning their funeral." "It's not like that." "What's it like then?" Patricia stood up, rage flooding through her. "Explain to me what it's like to sleep with your wife's sister in her dead parents' house." Daniel tried to reach for her. "Patricia, please. I know this is awful timing." "Timing?" Patricia laughed, a harsh sound. "You think the problem is timing? The problem is you've been betraying me with my own sister." "I want a divorce," Daniel said quietly. "I'm in love with Lauren. We want to be together." Patricia stared at him. "You're telling me this now? 4 days before my parents' funeral? I know it's terrible timing." "Stop saying that," Patricia was screaming. "Now. There's no good timing for this. You've destroyed everything." Daniel left that night, packing a bag and walking out. Patricia later learned he went straight to Lauren's apartment. Patricia spent the next 3 days in shock. She called in sick to work. She ignored calls from relatives asking about funeral arrangements. She lay in bed and tried to understand how the 2 people she trusted most had betrayed her so completely. On Wednesday, Lauren tried to call. Patricia didn't answer. Lauren sent a text. "Trish, please. We need to talk. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened." Patricia read the message and felt rage burn through her grief. It just happened. Like they'd accidentally tripped and fallen into bed together for 6 months. She thought about her parents, about how her mother had always worried that Lauren was too wild, too impulsive, about how her father had always told Patricia to look after her little sister. They'd trusted Patricia to keep the family together. And now, 4 days before their funeral, the family was destroyed. Thursday morning, Patricia woke up with a clarity she hadn't felt since finding Daniel's coffee mug. She got out of bed, showered, dressed in business clothes. She made coffee and toast. Then she sat at her kitchen table and made a plan. The funeral was Saturday at 2 o'clock. 200 people were expected. Friends, family, former students of her father's, colleagues of her mother's. Everyone who'd known and loved Patricia's parents would be there, including Daniel and Lauren. Patricia pulled out her laptop and started working. She was good at organization, good at planning. That's what made her excellent at her job as a financial analyst. She knew how to present information clearly and effectively. By Thursday evening, Patricia had created a presentation. Photos, text messages, timeline. Everything documenting Daniel and Lauren's affair, laid out with the same precision she used for corporate reports. She'd gotten the text messages by logging into Daniel's phone account. They shared a phone plan, and Patricia had access to all the records. Hundreds of messages between Daniel and Lauren, going back 6 months. Messages that were explicit, romantic, talking about their future together. Messages sent while Patricia was at work, while she was visiting her parents, while she was sleeping in the same bed as Daniel. Patricia also pulled security camera footage from her parents' house. Her father had installed cameras after a break-in in the neighborhood 2 years ago. The footage showed Daniel and Lauren arriving together multiple times over the past 2 weeks, staying for hours. The most recent visit was 3 days ago, the day before Patricia had found the coffee mug. Daniel and Lauren had been in the house for 5 hours, completely comfortable, like they owned the place. Patricia downloaded all the footage and added it to her presentation. Friday, Patricia called the funeral home and made a small change to the service. She requested a video screen be set up, saying she wanted to show a photo montage of her parents' lives. The funeral director was happy to accommodate. Patricia also called her father's best friend Robert, who was giving one of the eulogies. "I'd like to say a few words too," Patricia told him, "after your eulogy, before the final prayers. Is that okay?" "Of course," Robert said gently. "I'm sure your parents would want you to speak." Friday night, Patricia packed the USB drive with her presentation into her purse. She picked out her funeral clothes, a black dress, simple and elegant. She set her alarm for 6 a.m. She didn't sleep. Saturday morning dawned gray and cold, fitting weather for a funeral. Patricia got up, went through her routine mechanically. Shower, makeup, hair pulled back in a neat bun, the black dress, pearl earrings her mother had given her. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. 3 weeks ago, she'd had parents, a husband, a sister. Now she had a plan. Patricia arrived at the funeral home at noon, 2 hours before the service. She helped arrange flowers, greeted early arriving relatives, accepted condolences. She was calm, composed, the perfect grieving daughter. Lauren arrived at 1:30 with Daniel. They came separately, trying to appear like they weren't together, but Patricia saw them exchange glances across the parking lot. Lauren approached Patricia tentatively. "Trish, can we talk?" "Not now," Patricia said calmly. "We're about to bury our parents." "After then," Lauren pleaded. "Please, I need to explain." Patricia looked at her sister. Lauren was 28, pretty in a way that had always come easily to her. Men had always loved Lauren, gravitated toward her. Patricia had never been jealous. She'd been happy for her sister. Now she felt nothing but cold rage. "After," Patricia agreed. "We'll definitely talk after." The service started at 2 o'clock. 200 people filled the funeral home's largest room. Patricia and Lauren sat in the front row, with space between them. Daniel sat 3 rows back, trying to be respectful. The service followed a standard format. The minister spoke about Patricia's parents, about their faith, their service to the community. Robert gave a eulogy about Patricia's father, talking about their 40-year friendship, making people laugh with stories about fishing trips and terrible golf games. Patricia's mother's best friend spoke next, talking about what an incredible nurse and friend she'd been. Then it was Patricia's turn. She walked to the podium with her USB drive in hand. The funeral director had set up the video screen as requested, and Patricia connected her drive while the audience watched. "Thank you all for being here," Patricia began, her voice steady. "My parents meant the world to me. They raised me and my sister Lauren to value family, honesty, and loyalty. They taught us that family was the most important thing in the world." Lauren was nodding in the front row, tears on her face. "My mother always told me to look after Lauren," Patricia continued. "My little sister. She said family takes care of each other, no matter what." The screen behind Patricia lit up with a photo of Patricia and Lauren as children, hugging each other at a family picnic. "I've always tried to follow that advice," Patricia said. "I've always tried to be there for Lauren, to support her, to love her, because that's what sisters do." More photos appeared, Patricia and Lauren at graduations, holidays, family gatherings. Patricia and Lauren at Patricia's wedding 6 years ago. Lauren is the maid of honor. "And Lauren has been there for me too," Patricia said. "She's been a constant presence in my life. In fact, she's been very close to my husband Daniel for the past 6 months." The room went very still. The photos on the screen changed. Now they showed text messages, explicit messages between Daniel and Lauren, messages talking about their feelings, their plans, their physical relationship. Gasps echoed through the funeral home. Patricia saw Lauren stand up, her face white. Daniel was trying to leave, but people in his row blocked him. "My husband and my sister have been having an affair," Patricia said, her voice clear and calm despite the chaos erupting in the audience. "They've been lying to me for 6 months, and after our parents died, they used their empty house as a place to continue their affair." The screen showed security camera footage now. Daniel and Lauren entering the house together. Timestamps from the past 2 weeks, including footage from 3 days ago, just 72 hours before this funeral. "While I was planning this funeral," Patricia continued, "while I was grieving for our parents, my husband and my sister were sleeping together in my parents' bed." The room exploded in shocked voices. Patricia's aunts and uncles were staring at Lauren in horror. Daniel's parents were standing, trying to get to their son. Friends were whispering, pointing, trying to understand what was happening. Before this gets even more intense, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Lauren was sobbing now, trying to push through the crowd toward the exit. "Trish, please, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Patricia said, her voice cutting through the noise. "You both decided your relationship was more important than my marriage, my trust, or our family. And you decided to continue that relationship in the house where our parents raised us, in the bed where they slept, while they were barely in the ground." The minister was trying to regain control. "Perhaps we should take a moment." "No," Patricia said firmly. "Everyone here came to honor my parents. They should know how their daughters turned out. One who tried to uphold their values, and one who destroyed her sister's marriage with her brother-in-law." Patricia's Uncle Tom stood up, his face red with anger. "Lauren, is this true?" Lauren couldn't speak, could only sob. Daniel tried to defend them. "It's more complicated than Patricia's making it sound." "Is it?" Patricia asked coldly. "Explain the complication. Explain how sleeping with your wife's sister for 6 months is complicated." Daniel had no answer. Patricia looked out at the 200 faces staring at her. "My parents taught me that honesty matters, that family matters, that loyalty matters. I'm honoring their memory by telling the truth, even when it's ugly, even when it destroys what's left of my family." She disconnected the USB drive and stepped away from the podium. The funeral director was approaching, clearly not knowing how to handle this unprecedented situation. "We can continue the service," Patricia said to him quietly. "I've said what I needed to say." But the service couldn't continue. The room was in chaos. Lauren had made it to the exit and ran out, still crying. Daniel followed her, ignoring his own parents calling after him. Half the audience was standing, arguing, demanding explanations. Patricia's relatives surrounded her, her aunts hugging her uncles asking if she needed anything, her cousins expressing shock and support. The minister eventually called for calm. "Please, everyone, let's try to remember why we're here. Patricia's parents deserve to be laid to rest with dignity." It took 20 minutes to restore order. Many people left. They couldn't handle the drama, or they followed Lauren and Daniel to get their side of the story. About half the original audience remained. The service concluded with prayers and final words. Patricia sat in the front row, numb now that her revelation was over. Her Aunt Sarah sat beside her, holding her hand. At the cemetery, only 50 people came for the burial. Patricia stood at her parents' graves and felt empty. The anger that had sustained her through the exposure was gone, leaving only grief. After the burial, there was supposed to be a reception at a local restaurant. Patricia went, mostly because she was on autopilot. About 30 people showed up, all of them on Patricia's side. No one had heard from Lauren or Daniel. Patricia's Uncle Tom approached her with a glass of wine. "That took guts, Trish. What you did back there." "I just wanted everyone to know the truth," Patricia said. "Your parents would be proud of you for standing up for yourself," Tom said, and ashamed of Lauren. Patricia wasn't sure about that. Her parents had loved both daughters. They would have been heartbroken by all of it, the affair, the public exposure, the family torn apart. That night, alone in her house that still contained Daniel's belongings, Patricia lay in bed and finally cried. Not just for her marriage or her relationship with Lauren, but for everything she'd lost. Her parents, her family unit, her trust in the people she loved most. The following weeks were brutal. The story spread through their community like wildfire. The woman who'd exposed her husband and sister's affair at her parents' funeral. Some people thought Patricia was brave. Others thought she was cruel, that she'd weaponized her parents' funeral for revenge. Patricia didn't care what people thought. She'd done what she needed to do. Daniel filed for divorce immediately. Patricia didn't fight it. She hired an excellent attorney who made sure Patricia got everything she deserved in the settlement. Daniel didn't contest anything. He was too eager to finalize the divorce and move on with Lauren. Lauren tried to reach out multiple times. Texts, calls, even showing up at Patricia's house. Patricia never responded. What was there to say? Lauren had made her choice. Their extended family fractured. Some relatives supported Patricia completely. Others tried to stay neutral, which Patricia interpreted as taking Lauren's side. Family gatherings became impossible. You couldn't invite both Patricia and Lauren without creating a disaster. 3 months after the funeral, Patricia's Aunt Sarah told her that Daniel and Lauren were living together. "They moved in together last week," Sarah said over coffee. "I thought you should know." Patricia nodded. She'd expected it. That had always been their plan. 6 months after the funeral, Patricia finally felt like she could breathe again. She'd thrown herself into work, gotten a promotion, traveled to Europe on a solo trip. She was building a new life, one that didn't include Daniel or Lauren. She also started seeing a therapist, Dr. Rachel Kim, who helped Patricia process the betrayal and the grief. "Do you regret exposing them at the funeral?" Dr. Kim asked during one session. Patricia thought about it. "No," she said finally. "It was the right moment. Everyone who loved my parents was there. They all needed to know what kind of people Daniel and Lauren really were." "Some people might say you could have chosen a less public moment," Dr. Kim suggested gently. "Maybe," Patricia acknowledged. "But they chose to use my parents' house for their affair. They chose to disrespect my parents' memory. The funeral felt like the right place to make sure everyone understood that." Dr. Kim nodded. "You took control of your narrative. That's powerful." 1 year after the funeral, Patricia ran into Lauren at a grocery store. They made eye contact across the produce section, and for a moment Patricia thought Lauren might approach her. But Lauren looked away and quickly left the store. Patricia finished her shopping, feeling oddly peaceful. She didn't hate Lauren anymore. She didn't feel much of anything for her former sister. The relationship was simply over, a part of Patricia's past that she'd moved beyond. Daniel she never saw. He'd moved to a different part of the city, and they had no reason to cross paths. Patricia heard through relatives that he and Lauren were still together, that they were talking about getting married. Patricia hoped they'd be happy, not because she forgave them, but because their happiness or unhappiness didn't matter to her anymore. They'd made their choices. She'd made hers. Everyone was living with the consequences. 2 years after the funeral, Patricia met someone new. His name was Marcus, a divorced architect with 2 kids. He was kind, honest, and most importantly, had no connection to Patricia's past life. On their 3rd date, Patricia told him the whole story. Daniel, Lauren, the affair, the funeral revelation. Marcus was quiet for a moment after she finished. Then he said, "That must have taken incredible strength." "Or incredible anger," Patricia said. "Maybe both," Marcus acknowledged. "But you stood up for yourself. You refused to let them control the story. That's not anger. That's self-respect." Patricia had never thought about it that way. The relationship with Marcus developed slowly, carefully. Patricia had learned to trust cautiously, to watch for red flags, to protect herself. But Marcus was patient, consistent, and proved over time that he was trustworthy. 3 years after her parents' funeral, Patricia stood in the cemetery on the anniversary of their death. She brought flowers, tidied their graves, and talked to them like she sometimes did. "I hope I made you proud," Patricia said quietly. "I know the funeral got crazy. I know it wasn't the peaceful goodbye you deserved, but I couldn't let them get away with what they did. I couldn't pretend everything was fine when it wasn't." The wind rustled through the trees, and Patricia imagined her parents understood. She'd done what she needed to do. The funeral revelation had been shocking, dramatic, and had fractured her family permanently. But it had also been honest. Patricia had refused to protect people who didn't deserve protection, refused to keep secrets that were destroying her. Some people still talked about it. The funeral where the daughter exposed her husband and sister's affair. It had become local legend, the kind of story people told in hushed tones. Patricia didn't mind. Let them talk. She'd lived through worse than gossip. 5 years after the funeral, Patricia married Marcus in a small ceremony with close friends. Only a handful of family members attended, the ones who'd stood by her after the revelation. Lauren wasn't invited. Neither was Daniel, obviously. Patricia's Uncle Tom walked her down the aisle, and Patricia felt her parents' presence despite their absence. At the reception, Tom made a toast. "Patricia's been through hell and came out stronger. She lost family members who betrayed her, but she gained something more valuable: self-respect and honesty. Her parents raised her to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. She honored their memory by refusing to live a lie." Everyone raised their glasses, and Patricia felt tears in her eyes. Not from sadness, but from gratitude that she'd made it through to the other side. The funeral revelation had been one moment, one explosive confrontation at the worst possible time, but everything after was Patricia learning to live authentically, to protect herself, to build a life based on truth rather than comfortable lies. She'd chosen the funeral for her revelation because that's when everyone who mattered was gathered, when her parents' values were being celebrated, when the contrast between those values and Daniel and Lauren's betrayal was most stark. Some people would always think she'd been cruel. Patricia had made peace with that. She'd done what was necessary to reclaim her story, her dignity, and her future. And she'd never regretted it for a single moment.